Hey guys, welcome back to another card game review. Today's game at the top is called Terrible Monster by Sweet Lemon Publishing. It is for 2 players, takes about 10 minutes to play, and is for ages 10 and up. In Terrible Monster, you're going to be getting a hand of cards in which you're going to be trying to defeat your opponent. You and your opponent are each going to have a certain amount of life tokens as well as counter tokens, and you're going to be selecting a character card, because I'm going to talk about the expansion as well. On your turn, you're going to play a card, as well as every other turn after the first turn, you're going to be drawing a card and playing 2 cards, and your objective is to reduce your opponent's life total to 0. How are you going to do that? Well, there's 4 cards in the deck that'll actually let you do damage to your opponent. Sometimes it'll be monsters, sometimes it'll be simple straight hits to the face, and other times there's a wombo combo of some type. Very simple, little unique game. Let me go ahead and show you what it looks like. Alright guys, so here is Terrible Monster, and this is what it includes in the game. First of all, you got your box and your rules. This is a deck of cards, and everybody starts with 5 cards in their hand. You got life tokens and curse tokens, or even counter tokens, maybe what you want to call them. Everybody gets 4 life to start with, as well as 2 of the counter tokens each, and 2 will form the pool. There's also going to be a handy-dandy little reference sheet, which will talk about every single card in the game, as well as the actions and set up in order, as well as this little Desperation expansion. Well, what is that? Well, in the game, if you get the little expansion, you're going to have a bunch of different characters you can choose from. So maybe I want to be the warrior character. Maybe my opponent will be the illusionist. Now the game's very simple. After you've gone ahead and set up, you got your 4 life and your counter tokens, you can go ahead and look at your hand. And in your hand, you're going to have either monsters or character cards or things that do different things, right? Mainly just playing cards. The person who starts off does one thing. They play 1 card. Draw 3 cards, then discard any 2 cards. So he would draw 3 cards, and then he would discard 2 cards he doesn't want. There we go. Then, after the first turn of the game, the second player in every turn afterwards is going to draw a card to start with, and then they can play up to 2 cards. Now, if you don't want and you have the expansion, you can actually, instead of playing a card, use this ability. You can only do it once a turn, though, and nothing can be, and these cards cannot be countered. I'll explain that in a second. This says swap the discard pile and the deck, and then reshuffle the deck. So that's something you can do. You can actually take this, instead of playing a card, you can take this, shuffle it, and make these guys the discard instead. He's not going to do that, though. So he's going to play a couple cards. He can play the Temple Guardian, which says at the beginning of his turn, the monster does 1 damage to a opponent, provided they have less than 2 counter tokens. So if I ever play one of these counter tokens, then I'm going to start taking damage. So the Temple Guardian doesn't hurt right now, but it might later. You can then play another card. This one says, pick a card from the discard pile and put it into your hand. So he can go in here and look, what does he want? There's Terrible Monster in here. Ooh. Investigation, this is the draw cards. I think he'll go for that one. So he'll take that. So he's drawn his card, he's played 2 actions. Now every turn afterwards is the same thing. Draw a card and take 2 actions. Now these counter tokens, what they do is whenever a player plays a card, you can play one of these counter tokens to counter that card. It's fairly simple. They play a card, you play this, that card doesn't work. Also, if I were to counter something with one of these tokens, you can actually counter a counter by playing 2 counters. So I play this to counter this, you play these 2, counter my counter. That is one way it works as well. On my turn, there's also a couple other things. So first thing I can do is I can do 2 damage to an opponent, so they would instantly lose 2 health, unless they had a card to play or something like that. And now they're down to 2 left. And the next thing I could do is something really cool. I could play Reanimation, which lets me put a monster card from the discard pile and put it into play. Terrible Monster. This is the beginning. This card can't be played unless at the beginning of my turn. This card can't be played. It can't be played by itself. So you have to play it with a Reanimation or a Summon or some other way like that. That's normally how this guy gets to play, because in only 1 turn it'll do 4 damage to my opponent. It's that strong. It's an instant kill. And there are other cards in here to destroy it. So at the next turn, if my opponent is unable to kill this monster and it comes back to my turn, he will die. And that's basically how the game works. Rinse and repeat, you keep playing like that. There's quite a plethora of different cards, and you can always choose to use your abilities as well. And that is the idea of how to play Terrible Monster by Sweet Lemon Publishing. Okay, so you saw how to play the game, and you can play 2 out of 3 rounds, which is normally what you do. And every single round, you can go ahead and choose a new character that has different abilities. If you got talk about a couple of these guys. The Illusionist, which is swapping the discard pile of the deck. This guy's the Warrior. You can pay 1 counter token to do 1 damage to your opponent. So start off with just doing 2 damage. And every time you get a counter token, which you can from the deck of cards, you can do damage with that guy. Pay a life token to choose a card from the deck and put it in your hand. That's the Adventurer. The Seer lets you draw a card randomly from your opponent's hand and choose a card from your hand and give it to your opponent. There's a couple other ones as well. In the deck is going to come with a couple extra cards when you get the expansion, but for the most part, it's all of these cards. And there's a plethora of different monsters that will get you. You have the Temple Guardian, which I explained before. the terrible monster, which is going to hurt you if you can get it into play with summoning it. You can't just straight away play it. As well as there's stuff like the Cutie Beast that just does 1 damage, and then you got that straight away shoot card. And that's the basic idea of the game. Very, very simple. Draw a card, play 2 cards. Draw a card, play 2 cards. Oh, you had a life, dead. Start again. For some reason, though, this game is just fun. I have played this countless times. I have taught people how to play this. My friends will actually come over to my house, grab this game from the box while I'm editing or doing whatever, and they'll sit down at the table and just start playing Terrible Monster. The simple little, like, basic mini game, but is so enjoyable. We just keep pulling it out for some reason. They just really, really enjoy it. It's got that take that aspect. There's some strategies involved. It's pulling cards from the deck or the discard pile, switching around, and you know how many cards are in the deck because it's a micro game. There's only so many cards in here, so you kind of even have an idea what is in your opponent's hand for the most part. And if you're very good, you can just get really, really good at this game. It's the more you play, the better you're going to understand how it works, what cards you have and how they can affect you, or how they're going to affect your opponent, when you want to summon a monster, when you don't, how you're going to use these counter tokens and how important they are, because these things come in handy. And if you don't have them, you can be in deep trouble. In fact, sometimes if you don't have them, cards in here will take effect and hurt you. You've got cards in here to destroy monsters, cards that inflict damage to players, searching cards, drawing cards, all in this little teeny tiny game, Terrible Monster. It's an excellent, excellent game. This is definitely by far one of my top favorite mini games, or like micro games, I should say. I just don't know what to say why I just enjoy this game so much, but it's fun and I like it, and I think a lot of people would agree with me.